Hey, it's Anthony with Land Title. I came to bring you your Boulder County Market update for the month. Let's dive right into the big stuff. We have a lot to talk about, but number one, I wanted to first and foremost give you some optimistic sort of data. The under contract numbers were up 30%, well above most of the marketplaces on the front range. Boulder County always seems to sort of lead change and transition. And this is a pretty cool one. Active inventory was down about 3.3%. So less inventory on the marketplace, but more buyers out in force early in the year is definitely a little bit of a promising sign for the moment. It should stop that decline in prices, which you can see there, the average sales price cumulatively was down 2.5%. Now, it's definitely different based off of product type and location and all these other things. So we'll dive a little bit more into that. Let's talk a little bit about inventory first. And I've broken this down detached versus attached. So detached single family inventory really in year over year, Boulder's exactly the same as it was. Now, this market tends to be a little more resilient in so many ways. High rises in inventory, things might get listed or taken off the market. They might get re-rented if they didn't sell. So, people with more wealth can weather the storm longer. And you've really seen that in the inventory levels. The ones that are kind of surprising right now, Erie's is down about 18% in active units. Louisville's down 40%, Superior's down 55%. But remember, we had a lot of Marshall Fires rebuilds that happened, and a lot of that stuff got sold off. It looks like it's starting to come out in the wash a little bit where we're kind of done with some of that inventory and we're getting back to maybe some more normalized levels. One that kind of surprised me a little bit was the Longmont market is actually down 5% in active units. So that's really carrying a lot of the weight in the market because it's such a big marketplace. But yeah, so that attached market though, little different story, right? This is where we've seen some of those headaches and some of what's causing that price decrease is the city of Boulder has 190 units on the market for condos and townhouses. Now that's almost 30% more than this time last year. Erie has 27 units. Yes, it's 35% up, but keep in mind it's only 27 units. So not terrible. And then of course, Lafayette, Longmont, Louisville, Superior, all down in inventory, 20 to 30%. So that's an interesting one to watch. Definitely keep your eyes on that. That should be really good for price integrity in those marketplaces. So maybe we stop seeing that price depreciation, but it really depends on what's going to come to market in the next few months. Okay, let's talk detached single family homes by price range. I think this is a good one. We can see some big takeaways or some overarching, changes that are kind of taking place. And right now you can see over 2 million people are plugging along, right? I mean, we had 3 homes for over 3 million, 2.5 to 3 million. We had 4 homes, double what we had last year in January, and the 2 to 2.5 million had an extra home sale. So we really are doing better in the luxury region than we have been than we did a year ago. Now that's a good sign, but the other issue we're running into is 1 to 2 million is down about 20% in those sales. So we definitely see sales in January from December. So doesn't necessarily give us the best feel about what's happening going forward, but the 800 to a million range, we saw some more sales take place there. And at the lower end of the market, so under 500,000 in Boulder County, we definitely saw some more activity there as well. But in the active units on the marketplace, we see more inventory in luxury, really anything over 1.5 million. We have more units on the marketplace. That's going to start to create some tension there. But we definitely have a lot less homes on the market, from 1.5 down below that. So that's an interesting shift that's been taking place. Now, if we look at attached, this is very different. Across all price ranges, we've had less under contracts than we were seeing even a year ago. It's less demand from the buyers, and that's creating some of the tension you're feeling in the marketplace. So more inventory in a lot of price ranges. Luxury, though, very different story. It's going to feel a lot more like or detached single family home luxury inventory. You can definitely see, though, we've definitely had some stuff come on market. We've had 12 units come on the market active from 1.5 to 2 million in the attached market. Those are good. That's good product, right? That's stuff that isn't going to be feeling, the HOA increases or problems with insurance and all that stuff, because the newer, more attractive product type tends to be, easier to sell in some ways because it's newer product, and that's exciting for Boulder. Now, if we look at what's happening under 1.5 million, there's a lot less active units on the marketplace. So it leads us to believe that they've either been pulled off the marketplace or maybe they've just gotten rented and you're waiting for another day to sell. And then if you look from 3 to 400,000, 84 units currently on the marketplace. This is an astronomical amount of inventory compared to what we had a year ago at 45 units. So watch the lower end. That 300,000 to 500,000 market has a lot of inventory on it, and there's not a ton of sales going on. There's going to be a lot of pressure right there. Now, month supply of inventory and days on market by price range for detached single family. This tells you the story, right? So the biggest part about this is when you're talking to people and they're like, hey, we experienced a couple of offers on a home over the weekend. Well, in detached, it makes sense. There's only 1.37 months of inventory from 6 to 800,000. And if that happens, it's just a really competitive market and the sellers hold the upper hand. Well, you will see this rise for the rest, through the middle of the year. So this is the lowest point of inventory you should have. This is a really great time for sellers to list because of that, because there's a lot less competition on the marketplace for them. And buyers seem to be out in force, right? 30% more under contracts than we were used to this time last year. But the days on market also could be ranging all over the board, right? We've seen newer stuff come on the market and go under contract. Look at some of what we've experienced in the luxury market. 2.5 to 3 million was only 45 days. But then you got 500,000 to 600,000 last month that took 110. So stuff that really carried through over the holidays that was listed is starting to sell. So that's a really good sign there. Month supply of inventory and days on market by price range for the attached market is a very different story. From 500 to a million, really, we're sitting in that 2.5 to 3 months of inventory. For sure will be the lowest we see this year. This is all going to rise as well, as you saw so much come off the market last year towards the end of the year. We have lots of pent up seller demand. 300 to 500,000 though, they're already over 4 months of inventory. This is easily in a position where buyers are going to see the upper hand. So if you're looking for a deal, you're looking for something like that, buyers can really get that in the attached market, because it's hard to say how much longer this is going to last, but there's definitely troubling waters in the attached market. And I think there's definitely deals to be had there. So if there's a time to start shopping for attached product, we're getting close to it, right? I mean, you can definitely see that there's definitely a lot of inventory on the market and active, and not as many buyers taking advantage of that. So they're taking a lot longer to sell. Look at the 600,000 to 800,000 mark. We had 115 days. 500,000 to 600,000, 112 days. It's just taking a while to get sold, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. It's definitely still product moving in this environment. Next thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit about just how to have a conversation around price. So what's happening in the detached single family home market? It seems like it's been fairly stable over the last, 2.5 years, 3 years, even 3.5 years, right? Things haven't changed a whole lot, right? We came off our COVID peaks and really settled into this new vein where the average sold price really ranges somewhere right between, 1.1 million and $1 million every single month. And, over the last 12 months, you can see the change in most of these marketplaces. Now, the city of Boulder, detached single family home average is like 1.6 million, and it's been right there for a few years. So that's a good sign that it's only down 0.6%. It's very similar to what we saw over the last year. So stability is the key there. Now, certain markets like Lafayette have experienced some depreciation. Longmont, a little bit of depreciation, down 3%, but the Lafayette market takes the cake at minus 6%. So it had a really rough year in 2025. And some of the other markets, even seeing a little bit up, right? Superior went up 1.4%. It's a good sign because it was a rough year prior. So as they saw some depreciation in previous years, this last year didn't look too bad for it. And Erie down 1.7%, nothing to be hugely concerned about. And so let's look at the attached market, because this is where we see a lot of different hurdles. Now, it seems to me that we've been buying and selling and trading different product types in the city of Boulder. There's a lot of inventory right now. Yes, there are a lot of people trying to sell lower end units, but there's a lot of luxury that gets sold too. So this number bounces around in Boulder a lot. If you look at the county as a whole, you're showing a 1% price increase over the last 12 months. That may not necessarily be the case because it doesn't feel like that's the trend. You can see that this has been a slow degradation of the values of attached product. Now, places like Longmont saw an 8% drop in attached sales price in the last 12 months. Lafayette saw a 14% drop in attached sales price in the last 12 months as well. So there are markets that are getting hit pretty hard. Erie even saw minus 6%. So there's some big numbers there. There were pretty big decreases. That's what's really causing a lot of the total average sales price for the whole county to be down. right, is a lot of the attached market. Now, if you look at this, you can see the sold units. We were off a little bit from last year in January, but with all those extra under contracts, you should really expect to see a booming February, which is a good sign, right? It's pretty exciting to see that. Where did it take place? Louisville had a lot less sales, down 50%, but keep in mind, we went from 17 to 9, so there's only 8 houses. Don't panic. Superior, same thing. We went from 17 to 7. Don't panic. Those are really ugly, large year-to-date change numbers, but year-to-date is 1 month, so not a big deal. Longmont was basically the same. Erie, couple homes different. And Lafayette actually sold a few more homes than it did the year before, so that's a good sign. Last slide for you here is our percentage sold price to list price. You can see this is cumulative and combined, but the one thing I wanted to take away from this, it doesn't take into account our price drops. It doesn't take into account concessions, which we see on so many of the deals. So what is this really measuring? Well, it's measuring the buyer's ability to negotiate in some ways. So it is getting it more and more favored for the buyer right now. And so this was a really big drop compared to what we saw a year ago. Year over year, this is down 1.5%. So buyers are really able to go out and get a better deal than they were before. We're talking concessions on top of this, and a lot of these homes had price drops before they even got to this point. So it's a tough time for sellers. It's a really good time for buyers. Buyers need to go out, get off the fence, and get involved. Sellers are going to come back to market, and it's going to be less favorable for sellers over the course of time. But this does rise, usually all the way until that middle of the year mark where, that April, May, June is usually the peak. So this was probably the best time where, in December, you can go put a house under contract. You'll get the best deal of the year, and that's what causes these numbers. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have any other questions, concerns, please reach out to me. I'm always have other data to share. I'm Anthony at Land Title. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. See you next time.